Welcome to this presentation of the Book of Mormon in Mesoamerica, a short overview. This presentation is produced by myself, Brad Omer, based upon years of study and the careful examination of many Book of Mormon geography models. Although the information presented here draws from a wide array of scholarly sources, I take full responsibility for the content and I speak only for myself. I do not attempt to represent the church or any other group. I recognize that others may have different opinions, and I simply present the case from my viewpoint and hope that others will respectfully do likewise for theirs. I begin with the commonly accepted premise that the Book of Mormon is a story of real people at a real time, but someplace in the Americas. This is a proposal for that someplace to be in Mesoamerica. What is Mesoamerica? It is a region that includes southern Mexico, Guatemala, and surrounding areas. It is the region inhabited by the ancient cultures of the Olmec, Maya, Aztec, and others. By locating the Book of Mormon in a real place, it does not prove it to be true, but it strengthens the reality and historicity of the Book of Mormon. Real people in a real time in a real place. It affirms that Joseph Smith could not have fabricated this book. We assert that the Book of Mormon is what it says it is, a sacred book from God, given through Joseph Smith by miraculous means. Its purpose and central message is to affirm that Jesus Christ lives, that he is the Savior of the world, and that his gospel has been restored to the earth again in these latter days. The greatest evidence of the Book of Mormon will always be the witness of the Spirit. My purpose is to simply support that witness with the best evidence that we can find at this time. Some may say, why is the Book of Mormon geography still a question? Hasn't it been solved by now? And the answer is no. There is no revelation at this point identifying the location. And the church is explicit that no one can claim prophetic or church support for their ideas. It is still a work in progress, using our best abilities. But the ongoing results are very encouraging. For the first part of the Book of Mormon story, as Lehi and his family are brought on their journey through the Arabian Peninsula, Book of Mormon scholars propose some excellent solutions to the geographic setting and the path of travel. This is discussed in great length in several books and videos and are summarized here. I agree with these general concepts. However, God eventually brought three groups of people to the Americas: the Jaredites, Lehi and his family, and the Mulekites. He brought them to somewhere in the American continents, and that is why we are not quite as sure of the geographic details and the routes of travel. So, why do we not know for certain where the Book of Mormon happened in the New World? There are at least two reasons. First, when the Nephites, Mulekites, and Jaredites landed somewhere in the Americas, it was new to them. They did not know where they were. They could not say Chile or Mexico or New York. The best they could do was to describe the land, which they did with hundreds of references. The second reason that we don't know for certain is that God has not chosen to reveal it to us yet. Many authorities have said many things, but they have been very contradictory, and none of them have the approval of revelation. In fact, searching for the geography of the Book of Mormon is in many ways perhaps a distraction to its central message of Christ. However, God promised that in future times evidences would come forth. Ever since the time of Joseph Smith, devoted members have been searching for those evidences. It's also important to note that many faithful members simply do not care where the Book of Mormon took place. For them, the geography is not important, and their testimony does not rely on it, and that is fine. However, for many others, including myself, finding evidences can strengthen testimonies and help make the Book of Mormon more real. This is what we seek for, but we must do so with caution and humility. However, before we seek for the geography, there are a few important considerations that must be taken into account. First, we should follow the guidelines set forth by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. These guidelines are published in an essay on the Church's website. I embrace and support these guidelines. Some basic points include: the witness of the Spirit and the testimony of Christ will always be of the greatest importance. The Book of Mormon story happened somewhere in the Americas. Other than that, there is no official position from the Church. Individuals may have ideas, but caution is urged, and contention should be avoided. And no one can claim prophetic or church support. This is very significant. Secondly, if we accept this statement, then the two remaining sources that can help us are the text. The very words of the Book of Mormon are rich in geographic information, and they are our best source. Also, our accumulated knowledge. Over the last 200 years, there have been tremendous advances in archaeology, history, anthropology, climatology, geology, linguistics, textual analysis, ancient studies, and so forth. These are all very useful if we are careful with them. So, if our prime source of information is the text of the Book of Mormon, what does that text reveal about its geographic setting? We need to understand that Mormon and his son Moroni, under the direction of God, compiled and abridged the records of 3 great civilizations, with millions of people, covering a time span of nearly 3,000 years. It was written as a sacred history with a persistent theme of testifying of Jesus Christ. It was not written as a secular history, and certainly not as a geographic roadmap. But even so, as the complexities of these millions of people are described, there is woven into the text hundreds of details describing in some fashion the geographic setting. Rivers, mountains, journeys, cities, directions, seas, narrow passes, travelers lost into the wilderness, warfare, movements of armies, and so forth. Over 500 geographic references are given and are integrated organically throughout the entire text, like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. The various writers refer to these geographic elements very matter-of-factly, as if we have the same map in front of us that they do. Over the years, many scholars have carefully reviewed the text, examining every reference and geographic clue. The results so far have yielded a detailed and coherent picture. The jigsaw puzzle pieces actually fit together, and they fit very well. From this, many significant geographic elements clearly emerge and create something of a generic map. Here is a list of a few of them. Number 1. An East Sea and a West Sea are repeatedly mentioned and described as prominent points of reference. Seas are interpreted as being the ocean or connected to the ocean. They are not rivers and not lakes. Number 2. There is a land southward and a land northward. The Nephite and Mulekite groups are primarily in the land southward, and the Jaredites in the land northward. Note the use of the WARD qualifier. It is not the land north, it is land northward. This implies some flexibility in the exact directions. All of the indicators suggest perhaps a westward leaning of the land northward in relation to the land southward. Number 3. Between the land northward and the land southward is a narrow pass, also referred to as a narrow passage and a narrow neck of land. Exactly what this means is still debated. Early on, it was assumed to describe an isthmus, but the text does not specifically require this. The narrow pass is clearly close to the West Sea, but its relationship to the east is ambiguous. Caution must be exercised. But whatever it is, it acted as a constriction point, constraining the travel between the land southward and northward. In the land southward is a narrow strip of wilderness that runs from the East Sea to the West Sea. This features prominently in the story and is the dividing line between the land Nephi to the south and the land Zarahemla to the north. It is a physical barrier in which people have difficulty traveling and can easily get lost. We interpret this as most likely a mountainous barrier of some kind. Number 5. The land of Nephi is always up from Zarahemla, and Zarahemla is always down from Nephi, always. There are compelling reasons to interpret this as a difference in elevation. Nephi is the highlands, and Zarahemla is the lowlands. Number 6. Only one river is named, the Sidon River. It figures prominently in the story. It begins in the narrow strip of wilderness and flows in a northerly direction, at least as far as the city of Zarahemla. It must be small enough for raging armies to efficiently cross it, but large enough to carry thousands of slain warriors downstream to the sea. Number 7. The overall climate must be temperate or tropical. In 3,000 years of history, cold weather is never a factor. Activities are identified in every month of the year, and cold weather never affects anything. In contrast, heat is mentioned, and armies routinely fight in near-naked conditions. Number 8. Limited space. The early Book of Mormon models conceived of these civilizations swarming thousands of miles across the American continents. The text simply will not allow this. Over 200 journeys are described in the Book of Mormon, and many of them give details as to the people involved and the days of travel. As these puzzle pieces are assembled, it describes a theater of operations that is no more than about 800 miles long and perhaps 500 miles wide. The dimensions of the story are hundreds of miles, not thousands. Number 9. The archaeological footprint must be massive. 3 major civilizations, millions of people, thousands of years. Huge building projects, earthworks, highways, and infrastructure. Extensive agricultural works, fixed centers of civilization, advanced social structures, high literacy with extensive written languages, massive warfare with millions being killed, advanced use of metals and of cement. Also, the inference that major populations continued after the end of the story and likely preceded it. All of this demands an imposing physical presence which should be detectable through appropriate archaeological efforts. Number 10. All of the compass directions are repeatedly used along with variations. I accept that these references are indeed to the cardinal directions as we understand them, and that north means north. Even so, careful flexibility must be given for point of view and cultural nuances, similar to what we do. For example, we refer to the Midwest of the United States. Midwest from where? Much depends on your reference points. As we work with Book of Mormon directions, we must be careful to identify the specific beginning and ending points. Number 11. The Hill Cumorah must be north, or at least northward, of the narrow pass. It must be among a land of many waters and must be a viable site for the gathering of huge populations and the annihilation of 2 major civilizations involving millions of people. Number 12. The story mentions many migrations of thousands of people, but these migrations are always to the north, never to the south. So any model must allow for massive migrations to the north with the resulting archaeological evidence. Number 13. Where the narrow neck meets the West Sea, there must be a plausible shipbuilding and port facilities, allowing for the sea-bound migration of many people. Number 14. There must be much timber in the land southward and little timber in the land northward. Number 15. There must be evidence of advanced use of cement in the land northward. Number 16. There must be a feasibility of the catastrophic natural destruction as described in 3 Nephi 8. I accept the interpretation that this was cataclysmic volcanic eruptions with accompanying earthquakes, storms, ash, and darkness. This, too, should leave a mark in the geologic record. Number 17. There must be abundant sources of gold, silver, and copper, readily available for use throughout these lands. Number 18. Dozens of spatial relationships are described between cities and natural features. These must be consistent with proposed geographical locations. These criteria, along with many others, are defined and supported by hundreds of verses and references. Any model must be able to conform to all of these textual requirements. So, we first start with the criteria as established in the text. That is our guideline. Now, as for our knowledge, since 1830, the sciences have also advanced tremendously. We know so much more now than we ever did. We can speak with strong confidence on many topics, such as the magnitude of ancient American civilizations, thousands of ruins, languages and writings, ancient geology and shorelines, patterns of settlements and trading, history of rulers and wars, and so forth. Do we have certainty and finality? No, but many powerful evidences exist that did not exist before, that help to frame a strong model. As we try to fit this generic map into the real world, we must be careful with the challenge of methodology. The best method is to establish the criteria and then follow the evidence to its most logical conclusion. Unfortunately, many models seem to take the opposite approach. Sometimes a favored location is first chosen to be the answer, and then evidence is cherry-picked to fit the conclusion. Or one or two statements by authorities are extracted as revelation, and everything has to fit that conclusion. The church did a survey once asking members where they think the Book of Mormon happened. The most common answer was, wherever they serve their mission. Feelings and wishes are nice, but they are not facts, and they are not criteria or evidence. We must follow a proper objective methodology. So, after all of this, where did it happen? We take our criteria and our knowledge, and we begin to search the Americas for the very best fit that we can find. Again, be careful. We can find evidence of people and buildings all over the place, but that is not enough. We find mountains and rivers and seas, but that is not enough. We must satisfy all of the criteria to a high degree. So we search, evaluate, analyze, study, and discuss. Dozens of very capable people have been involved in this search for many years. And over the decades, a consensus has emerged around one significant location. Mesoamerica, southern Mexico and Guatemala and the surrounding areas. This one area satisfies all of the major criteria. No other area even comes close. Clearly the work continues, and there are still many questions to answer, but everything we know at this point converges convincingly to Mesoamerica. Consider just a few points. The archaeological footprint is a great fit. Massive civilizations are found in the right place for the right time. Every new discovery seems to confirm this. The general geographic footprint is also a very good fit. There is a narrow strip of wilderness that runs from the East Sea to the West Sea. Two major rivers originate in this strip and flow northward. The debate still continues as to which of these is the best candidate for the Sidon. The area north of the narrow strip is lowlands or down, and the area south is highlands or up. There is a clear land southward and a land northward separated by a narrow place. The exact nature of the narrow pass is still being debated, but excellent and viable candidates exist. The south has timber, the north has little timber, but lots of cement. The hill Cumorah is still debated, but a few excellent candidates exist, and they are all within Mesoamerica in the land northward. And the list of correspondences goes on and on. The evidence is profound, and the more that we learn about these ancient civilizations, the greater illumination it sheds on the story and text of the Book of Mormon. Insights are gained regarding political orders, the structure of society, pagan religions, earthworks, highways, religious motifs, literacy, patriarchal lineages, movements of people, trade, agriculture, patterns of warfare, plants and animals, ores and metals, wildernesses, wild and ravenous beasts, geologic destruction, and sunken cities, and on and on. Also, all the evidence suggests that the basic topography of Mesoamerica is fundamentally the same now as during Book of Mormon times, and therefore is useful for study. But some may ask, what about the great destruction at the time of Christ that changed the entire face of the land? The best response is that all of the writers who lived after the time of Christ had no problem identifying all of the major features mentioned by those who lived before Christ. The land with all of its deformations was basically still the same. Perhaps this is like a person who suffers injuries to their face. Their entire face is indeed changed, and yet we can still see all the major features and can recognize them without any problem. So it seems like we know all the answers now, and that settles the question, right? Well, be careful and be patient. We know a lot, but not everything yet. In Mesoamerica, both the blessing and the challenge is the great complexity of what is found. We know from the Book of Mormon that huge civilizations continued after the story and were likely there before. The historical and archaeological picture is very complex. Plus, the jungles have had centuries to swallow everything. Recent LIDAR surveys suggest that only a tiny fraction of the ruins have been found, uncovered, and examined. There is so much yet to do. But everything that we have learned in the past 180 years supports the idea of converging on Mesoamerica as the most probable location for the Book of Mormon. Again, let's be clear. Does this prove the Book of Mormon? No, that was never the goal. Proof can only come from the witness of the Spirit. But does it give evidence, support, and insight? Yes. As one person noted, we are not trying to make the Book of Mormon more true. We're trying to make it more real. And does this absolutely prove Mesoamerica is the true location? Not yet. It is an extremely good fit and is currently the most compelling model by far. But this is an ongoing process. When final revelation comes, or incontrovertible evidence arises, we must all be listening and be willing to adjust our proposals as needed. Even as we support a proposal, let's keep our minds open and our hearts humble. I feel that we can proceed with confidence, but with caution. Everything we are finding is clarifying, affirming, and illuminating the Book of Mormon. This is a story of real people in a real time in a real place. All of this supports Joseph Smith as a prophet of God who translated this record by the gift and power of God. The Book of Mormon stands as another testament of Christ and invites all people everywhere to come unto him and receive his saving grace. I joyfully add my testimony to all of this. I encourage you to seek out worthy resources that continue to illuminate this fascinating topic. One of the very best resources is Scripture Central. There, you will find a wondrous array of materials related to Book of Mormon geography, along with hundreds of other testimony-affirming topics. Thank you for reviewing this presentation. I would be happy to personally share this presentation with family or church groups. To schedule a presentation or to offer any other feedback or inquiries, please contact me at my email address shown here. Again, thank you for your kind attention.